Oh,
100%.
it's funny. All
Yeah.
right. Well, welcome to the podcast. Today we have Cecilia Stabell. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sound alchemist and expansion mentor. And I'm really excited for this conversation because I think, like so many of us, I'm so fascinated with manifestation. I love that space where science meets like woo, right? Where it's like all the like, it's so fascinating to me. And manifestation for me is something that I have dove deeply into over the last few years. I think like a lot of us, right? And
Mm.
sometimes it just feels like it's just out of reach, right? Like we're doing all the work, but yet like nothing's like taking hold. So I'm super excited to get into this conversation, but we'll start with if you're open to sharing and if you know your human design or astrology, and then just like a little bit about you, kind of like your story, any pivotal moments along the way that sort of got you to doing what you're doing today.
Yeah. My human design, I'm a 6'2". So I'm a little bit of like a hermit, but also a leader, which
Mm-hmm.
is very much a good description of the way that I am. I'm a very natural leader, but I also really need my own space.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a double Pisces, sun and moon, and then Leo rising.
Ooh.
And yeah, and most of my friends are like, oh yeah, the Leo is strong and like the Pisces kind of comes in from time to time. But I think I'm a little bit more structured probably than a lot of Pisces, even though I'm
Mm.
very creative. Yeah, which is needed sometimes when you have your own business. So
Yeah.
it's good to have
Yeah.
that part there.
I'm a Leo
Yeah.
rising as well. I love, sorry,
Ah,
I completely interrupted you. I love meeting people. So I find I so connect with Pisces because it's in the eighth house, right? So anyone that's got like heavy Pisces energy just can like go there and we go deep. And so just side note, but I love it.
amazing. Yeah, you probably know so much more about astrology than I do. I'm a little bit into the gene keys, which is like
Mm,
a mix
beautiful.
of the astrology and I Ching and Kabbalah and like
Yeah.
a merge of kind of going deeper.
Mhm.
But yeah, if you have perspectives you want to jump in, please do. I'd love that. So yeah, and also in the sign that I have, like in my gene keys, it's like you are gonna like struggle until you're like around 30. Like you're gonna like have your lessons and your teachings and all of that. And that's very much been my journey. I had a heavy metal poisoning from I was 18 until 26. I was really
Wow.
sick. I could barely read. I was depressed and very underweight and just didn't feel any kind of purpose in my life. And my whole life was just sucked in by trying to figure out what was wrong with me. It took like 4 years to figure it out. And then about 4 years of like really intensive detoxing and healing and building back up my brain. So I came out on the other side of that and realized that I had never really been an adult without being sick. And I wanted to be very conscious about the life that I created instead of just defaulting to a life that I saw so many people living around me that might work for them, but was just not anywhere near the life that I decided to live. And I think probably also this process of feeling so out of alignment and feeling such a lack of purpose and lack of energy in anything I wanted to do, like I didn't have the energy to pursue it. I was like, fuck no, I'm not going to spend my life now just like doing things that I should be doing. I'm going to take some deliberate time to actually get into what I want to be doing. And I also recognized that even though I had actually never called myself sick during the process, like when you have been sick for such a long time, you also it clouds your identity. Like who am I? Like I used to be super driven and like very into sports, very best in my class. Suddenly I could barely read. So I also realized that there are probably a lot of like things that I have actually taken on a little bit on this identity that I am going to keep showing up as unconsciously if I don't go in and kind of clean that up. Because as your listeners might know, 95% of our reality is controlled by our subconscious mind. So what you said earlier about manifestation, like sometimes we can like really want it and it just isn't happening. And very often that is because that's the 5% of the conscious mind who's like, oh my God, it would be so cool to create this business and I'm looking for this impact and I want to be on these stages. And then the 95% is like, oh, I don't feel worthy of that. And if I double my business, then I'll double my stress. And I definitely don't want to do that. And then we go into self-sabotaging patterns. And that looks very different for people. Sometimes it can be, overworking, or sometimes it can be procrastinating. And it's all of these different ways of like hiding from our potential and what we truly want. So I kind of came out on the other side after I was sick and then just realized that oh, I'm going to end up probably doing that if I don't really start cleaning up here. So I got really deep into meditation. In the beginning, it was just painful to sit down, close my eyes, and just sit with myself. And I was like, oh, I just need to work out. I just need some sunshine. I just need some food. And all of those are really great habits. And it's important to have a good life and to be happy. But part of me was kind of escaping some part of like what was happening when I was sitting in silence. So I was like, I need to go deeper into this. So I went to a meditation retreat for a week and had what people call a Kundalini awakening. So that is, a spiritual awakening and something that will like really tap you into your life force and your purpose. For me, it felt like in the moment, probably what people talk about when they're talking to like a coming to God experience. That's the only kind of reference I had for it. I was like, this is more love than I had felt my entire life. And it just felt like my heart just blew open. I had never felt this kind of love. And it just came from within. It was like so unconditional. And it just tapped me back into this remembrance of like, this is who I am. This is what I'm here to do. Almost like a deeper destiny that I was just like tapping back into that had always been there available for me. But I was just like, oh, now we're here. Now the game begins. And then came out of that retreat and just realized like, this is not an exclusive that I have with source or the universe or God or whatever you want to call it. Like, this is something that's available to all of us. And I really want to help people remember because when we connect to this universal love that's available to us, to this energy that's there for all of us, then I truly believe we can really create magnificent things. So that started a journey of just, being curious and traveling the world and studying at a mystic school, studying to be a sound healer, studying to be a hypnotist, Reiki, Kundalini, all of these different practices after being very much in like the neuroscience, biohacking space when I was sick. So like you mentioned, I also love like merging the science and the mysticism and also see so many crossovers between the two. We just like, as Joe Dispenza, person that I've studied a lot with, likes to say like that no, science is the contemporary language of mysticism. And I find so much truth in that. There's so much overlap and so many things that they couldn't necessarily explain with science, but we see now today is like, oh, that's actually what's happening. And that's really cool. So I think the merge between the two is magnificent.
Yeah.
So now I ended up like developing my own sound healing method. So I travel around the world and I do that called vibrational vortex, which is a mix of sound healing. I channel music through my voice. That's my main instrument. And then I use soundscapes at very specific frequencies and bring in some hypnosis, some Reiki and Kundalini. So a lot of people say that they go into a similar, like a psychedelic state, but without any psychedelics. Because again, we have access to these states all the time and we don't need substances in order to access it. We already have DMT in our lungs, right? And for a lot of people, it feels a lot more safe because if you're in a psychedelic journey, you can't just pull yourself out. But if you're in this kind of journey, you can be like, no, this is too much. Like I'm leaving the room, right? Uh, so yeah, I do that and I mentor leaders and help them, especially people that might not necessarily be so conscious about this work, but are really ambitious in what they want to do to go in and unlock these deeper things so it can actually, level up to the next level. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing all that. I'm like, I have so many questions. I guess we'll maybe like start backwards because I'm always fascinated with like frequency. And you mentioned, being able to get into this like psychedelic state through like sound. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's frequency, right? We're putting ourselves in this
Mm.
vibrational state that you maybe would be in if had you taken psychedelics. And my understanding of it is always, psychedelics are kind of like it's like opens the door to it, but like you have to be the one to like anchor in, right? To be able to get
Hmm.
those experiences. And I've only had two experiences that have gotten me close to what I would imagine that being without taking like psychedelics. And it was one, actually it was a meditation. I just like felt completely out of my body. Like my kids were running around and there's a part of me that was like, I should like come out of this. Like, but I was like hovering above myself. And the second one was a shamanic journey I took and there was no
Yeah.
psychedelics involved, but I just was so, I don't know, tapped into like everything around me. So I think it's so amazing. So I guess if we're going to like frequency and how that works in sound healing, what is that journey there? Like how, if, even maybe merging the science and the woo, right? Like kind of coming to that space because it's so beautiful. And I think, like you said, science is it's all like interconnected. And I think like science is really just proving that all the other stuff that we're
100%.
so like disconnected with is really true that we just like couldn't see before.
100%. And science is only about 300 years old. And that is what we're like proclaiming like everything has to be scientific these days. And it's
Yeah.
like we have these ancient traditions that are thousands of years old that have been working for thousands of years. But it's like especially in the West, it's like we have almost lost the connection to our heart and our bodies a little bit, and we're just operating from our mind. So if it doesn't add up in numbers and we can't analyze the fuck out of it, then it doesn't really matter. you know? And I love everything that I can understand with science and I can explain. And then I also have been so humbled to the fact that there are things that I can't, because nature doesn't work in linear ways.
Mm-hmm.
It works in spirals and circles in a completely different way than what we usually view reality, especially in the West. So, but everything when we're talking about frequency and we're talking about sound, like if we are looking at a molecular level, like in everything is made out of atoms and molecule in the entire universe, our bodies, everything around us, right? And an atom has a nucleus, and around that nucleus, there's electrons spinning at all times, and those electrons creates a wavelength and a frequency. And whenever there's frequency and wavelength, there will always be sound. So every single cell in the universe is always emitting sound. But most of this is below the human perception. It's like when a dog can hear voices or noises that we can't hear as human beings, and they're like running away, and you're like, what was that? But they can clearly hear something that we can't. And so it's similar to that. So much is beyond the human perception of hearing, but a lot of this we still feel. So most people often call this intuition or a feeling, right? We walk into a room, and what's actually happening when we're like walking in and we're like, oh my God, like I feel so welcome and no one has even talked to you yet. Or the complete opposite, you're like, oh shit, someone had an argument here. And you just feel it before you even spoke to anyone. What's actually happening is that we are exchanging information through these big electromagnetic fields that we have around our bodies that can emanate up to 9 meters outside of our bodies if we know how to work with them and know how to expand them. So these electromagnetic fields are actually exchanging photons of light, and that's how we communicate. So we can go in and we can use sound to go and change the vibration of different parts of the body. And if we have had trauma, we often talk about in more like somatic in the somatic world that trauma can get stored in the body, and that can create like a resonance that's not the optimal resonance for that part of the body, because there's fear, there's dangers, there's just like this trauma has been stored there. So we can go in and we can actually lay over a different frequency that's a healthy vibration for that part of the body, and then we can sync that back. And the beauty of that is that we don't actually have to go through the mind. We can bypass the mind. So if we have trauma that's so deep that it's hard to access through talk therapy and even through meditation or hypnosis or deep subconscious work. Sometimes we need to go even deeper to the body in the nervous system. And or it's sometimes, some people believe in, karmic relationships or past life that can be very hard to access. So then going deeper. So the only requirement for that to happen, especially it can be confusing for people because oftentimes you don't understand what's happening. It's like, I feel this rage or I feel this pain or I feel like I want to cry, but I don't know what this is about. And that is like what we really need to do in order to heal it, because the body doesn't need to know what happened, but it just needs to allow, like for you to allow yourself to feel it. That's how it gets released. So that's why it's really beautiful, because we can go in and we can release things that have been dormant and stuck for a long time, and people come out on the other side and they're like, whoa, I just feel like a new person. I feel like I'm suddenly like magnetic. And when we're talking about manifesting as well and attracting things into our life, that's also, especially if we're talking about the quantum field, that is, like attracts like in the world of frequency. So if we are having this beautiful vision of what we want to do in the world, but in these 95% of our subconscious mind and in our nervous system, there's doubt and there's fear, and that's clouding our frequency and the resonance that we're sending out into the world. And because our frequency is made up of our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, but also our limiting beliefs and our traumas. So if we think really, really want something, and then again, we don't feel worthy of it, or we feel like that's going to be really stressful, I don't think I really want that. And that's also what we're emanating to our surroundings. So people might think like, I'm such a shitty manifester. Like I can never seem to like get the things that I want. And it's like, no, you're an amazing manifester. You're just matching the resonance of your subconscious mind, not of your conscious desires. So that's what is always happening. And people get a little bit confused about like, it's not happening for me. And then it's like, actually it is. It's just matching the wrong thing, not what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like sometimes in manifestation, we forget to celebrate the little things. right? Like these
Mm-hmm.
little
Mm-hmm.
tiny, I try and journal at night of just like all of my wins during the day, even though they're not like huge, like things that maybe like, it's, oh, my dream's coming true. But I think there are little things during the day that we do manifest that we just don't realize, right? Because we're just living life and we
A
gloss it
hundred
over. And
percent.
and so that in itself has kind of helped me to see the things that I am manifesting. Because for a long time, I
Mm.
was like, I'm just not manifesting anything. It's not that anything bad was happening. I just wasn't moving, right? Like there was
Yeah.
nothing like no like massive forward movement, right? And when I started like kind of redirecting it a little bit to just like notice those little things, it was really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. And
But
it's no, go ahead.
no, you first.
No, because manifesting also just really means to bring something into reality, right? And
Mm,
I think it's become this word, especially it's become a little like gimmicky now, like TikTok and stuff like that.
yeah.
People just think like, I think it, I snap my fingers and it's here. It's like, this is an art, it's a practice, it's a craft like everything else. And the better you get at it, the more fun and faster and serendipitously things come in. And sometimes it's the small things, and it's, I think sometimes we think like, oh, it didn't happen in 2 days. It's like, if you look back at your life after you started to include these practices in your life, how much magic has happened in the last two
Mhm.
years compared to the last 2 years before you knew this, I'm sure you'll see a huge upgrade. So
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
I think we're just a little too impatient.
Yeah. And I think we
Yeah.
don't realize, we don't see like behind the scenes, like the intense work that's gone in, or even the length of time that somebody took to get to where they're at, right? We're just seeing them now. And we're
A
like, oh
hundred
my gosh, they
percent.
manifested this dream. It must have just happened in the last like 3 months. But it's like probably sometimes a decade at least, of like this really intense work behind it. But yeah, I
A
definitely agree
hundred
too,
percent.
because I think of my, I guess my journey, I would say started about 8 years ago, and there are things that like I haven't achieved. And if you, obviously we can all go down that spiral of like, oh my gosh, like I don't have this or I don't have that. But then when I think about the human I am now versus then, like dramatically different, right? So I think that even just celebrating that is a win in
Mm.
itself. Like I have a completely different life, like everything is so different, apart from the house that I live in. But other than that, like it really has made a difference. But if we're going back to like the sound, how does, or I guess if my understanding is the sound, that sort of like sound healing, is that working on those like traumatic stories and things like that? Because I think, yeah, with trauma, it can be really sneaky. Like we
Oh,
don't,
100%.
like, I think there's a lot of subconscious beliefs that we don't maybe attach to it, or we just haven't brought to the light yet. Right. And
A
so,
100%. And the more we level up, the more these things are going to come up for us. People think like, oh, the more I level up, the easier it's going to get. Like, no. No, 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 no. Like the more you level up, the more pressure is coming your way, the more challenges, the more responsibility, the
mm,
more these things tend to come to the surface and you like are battling some part of yourself that you're like, why can't I seem to get beyond this? And that's often the sneaky trauma because I had a super blessed childhood. Like previously, when we were talking about trauma, like in our childhood, like I would never have thought that I had trauma because I had a very blessed childhood. But I also realized now we were talking about big T trauma and little T trauma, right? And little T trauma, we all have that. Like no one had a perfect life. If you were a child and you fell and you rubbed your knee and then started to bleed, and that was the most painful thing that have ever happened to you, like you didn't know if that was going to pass ever. Like it was like, oh my God, like that could have been a trauma for you in that moment. And the body can still remember that. So it doesn't have to be these huge experiences. As long as it like made an impact on you right there and then, it could be a hurtful comment, like whatever it is, it can stay stuck and it can create these limitations and patterns in who we think we can become. And also what we kind of patterns that we also become addicted to very often. And sometimes these can show up in also if it doesn't get too overboard, it's a functional pattern. Like a lot of high achievers, they tend to, work really hard. And that's a great attribute until you go into this hustle overworking mode where you can't really quit and suddenly you can't enjoy any of the time that you're not working because you think you should be working. And then that's a spiral of itself that is like, oh, maybe I don't think I'm worthy of success. And I've learned that I have to work hard in order to achieve good things in the world because a lot of people heard that when they were young, right? You have to work hard if you want to achieve something. And then they just work themselves to the ground in order to achieve something. And maybe they have an unworthiness issue as well. So they don't feel worthy of receiving money or receiving abundance. So they're like, I'm working so hard and nothing's coming my way. And they have these two conflicting patterns that are just driving them to the ground. And those are the kind of things that we can go really deep in. and work on, because that's also part of the reason why I layer in hypnosis. And I also layer in something called isochronic tones that's similar to binaural beats, but just for speakers. So it helps train the brainwaves to a certain frequency. And we can bring them into a theta brainwave state, which is a hypnotic state, a trance state. And when we go into an alpha or theta brainwave state, we go into a trance and we open the gates of the subconscious mind, and we can go in and we can start to reprogram the mind and drop these little seeds of new things in there. And when we're in theta, I don't actually have to talk anymore. I can just sing and I can layer in frequency, because when we're in theta, we see frequency as pictures and stories. So this allows everyone to be on their own unique journey that's kind of tailored to their pattern, instead of me being like, okay, now we're going to get rid of your unworthiness wound. If there's something else that you really need to work on, the frequency will guide that transformation. And that's what's so beautiful about it. So it's it allows us to kind of, that's why I work with both the mind and the body at the same time, because they're so connected and it's all working together. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think, a lot of the work I do is in embodiment, is trying to get out of the mind, right, and into the body. And I think that that's such an important piece to it, because, we're all spiritual beings having this human experience. And I think we want to avoid it, right? We want to like get out of the body. And I don't know. And especially, with astrologically, you Leo rising, Taurus is in your 10th house. I don't know if it's where your midheaven is or not, but Taurus for you is in the 10th house of like career and outward facing personality. And even just,
Okay.
people who are on YouTube can see it, but your background right now, it just is very like Taurus to me. I'm like, oh, I can see like
Okay.
the groundedness and the nature and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it's really interesting. And I know you have like a 3-step process, right, for manifestation. And are you open to sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, 100%. So I call it the inner light activation process. And the first part is, it's a lot of what we talked about right now. It's overcoming the subconscious beliefs and really working deeper on the mind, and through meditation, through hypnosis, and first of all, through awareness. I think a lot of us, if we just ask ourselves the question, like, what is the biggest block right now in my life? Like, there's going to be something that's just like, fuck, I just can't seem to solve my gut issues. I can't seem to get to the next level of my career. I can't seem to attract my soulmate. I feel like I have no community. Like, there's going to be something that's just instantly popping up and like hurting a little bit. Like, that's a good place to start, you know? And then actually asking yourself, why am I afraid of receiving this? Because if we just ask, then very often the question will come like this, and it can be an answer that will be like, that makes no sense. The subconscious mind very often makes no sense. It's very metaphorical. It's just stored from so, so long ago. So whatever is coming up as an answer to that question, like this, is usually it. And then actually like asking why. So, for example, I believe I'm not worthy of love. That could be like something for someone, right? And I believe I'm not worthy of love because I'm not a good person, right? And so that then we've kind of find the deeper root issue. You think you're not a good person, so you think you can't attract people. And then we have a place to start where we can start working on it. And sometimes just actually going in and using our mind as well, being like, is this actually an absolute truth? Like, it might have been how someone had made me feel, or some experiences in life had like made me internalize that narrative. But is it an absolute truth that I'm unlovable? It's not, right? I'm inherently worthy. I am love. That's the nature of who we all are. So starting there and like, oh shit, this is not true. And then going a little bit deeper through, I love to use hypnosis. I use a lot of like EFT tapping, very, very potent for people that are not familiar with that. You tap on different meridian points in the body, similar to what we do if we go to acupuncture, for example. And it's really helping resolve and just release a lot of these patterns that's stored in the body emotionally. So yeah, we can go through phrases of like tapping on these different meridian points, and there's different sequences, and then just reciting the things that we think maybe are not working. Like, I don't feel lovable because I'm not worthy, for example, and then reciting some good affirmations later, and then that will start to be imprinted actually in the nervous system. So very kind of weird. My mom's done this for 15 years, and I remember like in the beginning when I learned it, I was like, that's a weird thing, but it works so well. Like for PTSD, for depression, for anxiety, super effective. And then So there's a lot of different ways, obviously, to access the subconscious mind. I use a lot of meditation and also to get really clear on where we want to go. Because if we have no clarity of our vision, then even though that's, in the conscious mind, then it's going to be really hard to get there. It's like you can't hit goal if you can't see it, if you don't know where you're shooting, right?
Mm.
And the point is not even to get to the goal you set out on in the first place, but it's about the process we're going through when we're trying to get to that goal and the person we're becoming in that process. And that's really the whole point. But we need to have a goal in order to step into that personality and that reality. And so often we realize things on the way that we didn't even know existed when we started. We're like, oh, there's a completely different world out there. Like, oh, there's bigger goals for me, right? But if we didn't begin, we wouldn't have been able to see those new things. So we need to just start somewhere. And then we layer that with the second part of the system, which is the cellular light, and that is more about strengthening the body and actually really getting into the body. Because so many people, like, if I would have manifested what I wanted when I was really sick, I would just have collapsed under the weight of my own vision. Like my body was not able to hold that. I was so anxious and depressed and fragile that I couldn't hold my dreams in my physical body. And I think that's something a lot of people miss out on. Like our nervous system is actually built in our physical body, similar to when we have um, electrical wires in a house, because our nervous system is actually running on electricity. So electrical wires in a house have insulation through plastic, right? And if the plastic is not there, then the energy just dissipates. And our cells needs to be insulated with the right fatty acids. If they're not, our communication between our nervous system and our mind is going to be really poor. And we might feel like we are having panic attacks, or we're getting really like riled up, or like feel like we have ADHD, we can't focus, or we feel very tired when we should be like ramped up. We can't really control our state. It's similar to if I were to turn on the light in the room right now and the lights just started blinking instead of like turning on in the right way, because you don't have the right insulation of your communication system. So nothing's going to work. So I obviously, like you heard before, I'm like also been really into the science and into the biohacking world. So that's where I bring in a lot of that. And I see especially tends to be a lot of people in the spiritual world that are very like into manifestation. And I'd also say more of those people are vegan. And
Mm.
that's not necessarily an issue itself, but it's a lot harder to get the right fatty acids. And I see just a lot of lack of nutrients that's really important for the brain and for the nervous system. And if we don't have that, you can do all the visualization, all the subconscious work and trauma work in the world, but you're likely not going to be able to manifest what you want because your body is just going to fight against you. So sometimes it can be, no worries. No worries. So sometimes it can be these just, small changes that we need to make, but like making sure that we get the right fatty acids, especially actually saturated fatty acids, are the most stable fatty acids that we want to build our like cell membranes on, and then getting the right proteins, because proteins are what builds our neurotransmitters, and that's the communication signals in the nervous system. So that's what builds, dopamine. A lot of people have heard about, especially in relation to social media, like it's tapping our dopamine, and dopamine is the motivation molecule. And we have serotonin, which is more like feeling content and just happy in the serene state, and acetylcholine, which is super important for creativity. All of these molecules are built of fat and of protein. So if we're not, and again, a lot of people that are vegan sometimes don't get enough protein. So this is something I see with a lot of them. So if you just bring in some more protein and some more fatty acids, suddenly they're like, I thought I was an unmotivated person. And then I just ate a little bit differently. And suddenly, like, my brain is lighting up and I'm not anxious anymore and I can actually do shit and things are coming my way so much more effortlessly. So, bringing in the component of the body is also really important. And we also go deeper here. We already spoke a little bit about the nervous system work, but that's also, part of like anchoring it into the body with somatic practices where we really connect to the soma, to the emotions that's stored in the body through breath work, also through sound healing, can be through dance, and through also just acknowledging like the responses that we have, because we all go into these different patterns all the time. I have been like checking myself lately because, as I told you earlier, like as we level up, we're going to keep layering into new patterns and see new things that we keep doing.
Mm-hmm.
And really like being like, oh, layering it back and being like, oh, being conscious of it. And I'm okay, I'm going to tap a little bit on this. I'm going to go into a breathwork journey on this and just allowing ourselves to feel what's coming up, but also like, okay, I have resources where I can go in and I can alchemize this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. So I've been vegan for 14 years, and it's
Yeah.
in the last 6 months or so, I've really been considering. I've added eggs in here and there, but like my body has just craved sort of different foods. Like I noticed I wanted fish like 6 months ago, and I was like, because I'm it's not like I don't know. I just saw something I didn't like on TV like a while ago. It was like some hog hunter show, and I was like, oh, I can't do it anymore. And I was a vegetarian off and on in high school, and then so I started doing it that. So it wasn't really for any particular reason other than I was just kind of like grossed out. So anyway, so I tried like salmon, and it just didn't sit well with me. But I'm trying to like explore more because I find my body craving these different things. So it's interesting
Mm.
that you say that, and I wonder just maybe because of the work that I'm doing, feeling that kind of like over the last 6 months, I've definitely felt this like stuckness, right? And so it's just, I know I was listening to you talk. I'm like, I wonder if that's why my body's like reaching out for something to support me that might be more than what I'm currently giving it.
Yeah.
I do believe there are ways that we can do it being vegan, but I'm just trying to like trust what my body is telling me and like moving me towards. So it's just an interesting part. And I think that we do get very used to this is where the body is, I think the body is challenging in that sense because food, when it comes to giving up like alcohol or cigarettes or like anything else like that, we can kind of avoid those places. But when it comes to food, we can't avoid food because we need it to survive, right? And we have all of
100%.
these like comfort foods or getting the dopamine from the cookies or whatever it is, right? And so I think it's a little bit more challenging because we really have to be intentional and I don't want to say strong-willed because I think that it's 100% possible, but I think that the food piece is a little bit more challenging for some people.
Yeah. And then also realizing, like you just mentioned with cookies that are like
Mhm.
affecting the dopamine system, actually understanding that food are also molecules that will affect your body and then giving it the things that will affect you in a good way, where it's like, oh, I'm feeling satiated, I'm feeling focused, I'm feeling light, I'm feeling bright, I'm feeling grounded, right? And especially for people that are vegan, like you just mentioned, I'm like getting in, like I would definitely recommend for most people supplementing with B vitamins because that's also really important building blocks for the neurotransmitters of the brain and magnesium. It's like two things that is like almost for everyone a really good thing. And you can still get absolutely enough protein. It's going to be harder to get like the right kind of like branch chain amino acids and you just need to be more conscious of it. So for most people it can be good to like supplement with some protein powder, so just like to kind of like have a little bit of like a extra security check, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think the body will tell you, like you just mentioned. Like I remember I was vegan for around 8 months. And then I was just dreaming about fish, you know, and salami, which I don't even really
Yeah.
like. And it was just my body like, we need some of those fatty acids and that protein, right? And I was like, okay. And I could literally feel my brain turn back on when I started eating
Mm,
that. So sometimes like it also depends a little bit on genetics. Some people will
yeah.
start to crave it very fast, and other people it takes a little bit more time. And obviously, if you're more diligent about actually getting the right nutrients into your diet, so but just also yeah, making sure that you get enough protein and enough fatty acids because a lot of vegan also are very heavy on the carbs because there's a lot
Mm,
of, you know,
yeah.
grains and root vegetables and all of that and fruits often.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I've never felt like deprived or sick or anything like that from my diet, but again, just kind of trusting the body, right? Like I've added in
Yeah.
like a high quality collagen, which obviously is very
Mm.
not vegan, but I just was called to it and I was like, I'm just going to experiment with this in my protein powder, like whatever, right? So I think it is trusting and letting go of the shame of, I think veganism has become this thing that maybe it's not wasn't originally like intended for, right? And so
Yeah.
it's kind of like this weird ego thing now where I'm like, I guess I'm not really vegan anymore, but it's like weird to detach from that identity because it's been so long of me being vegan,
Yeah,
but this is
100%.
it's a
Oh,
side
but
note,
that's
but
also what we're talking. That's
yeah,
that's the reality of transformation, right? If we
yeah.
want to transform, we need to step into new identity and into new reality because our identity is usually what holds us back. Like I'm not saying that you need to transform
Mm-hmm.
necessarily from this pattern, but just relating it to manifestation. Like the reason we're not getting to a new place is because we're making choices as the identity we are today. Like the fastest ways to get somewhere else is like getting to that vision and like, oh shit, what would that version of me do? And like start acting like that today. And I do that quite often. And I have people look at me like I'm delusional and insane. but they're also like, how the fuck do you collapse time so fast? And I'm like, because I did the thing you told me not to do. Like, that
Yeah.
you thought was insane. But if you have that level of self trust and you're like, I'm going to figure this out. And you, instead of, if we always take all this like feedback and information from everyone else, then every single one person in your life is going to have different opinions about what you should do and how you should handle your life. So instead of being like, no, I trust myself, I trust where I'm going, and I feel like this is the right step. And if it feels a little bit fearful, but you know in your heart that this is the truth, that's exactly where you need to be. That's when you take quantum leap. If we wait until we're ready, then we're not really leaping. We're already there when we feel ready. Like, so it's this part of us that's like addicted to the certainty of like knowing that it's all going to work out instead of like, no, I'm going to take ruthless action and I'm going to surrender to the outcome. And I'm going to know that hey, maybe I don't end up where I wanted to, but I'm going to learn some amazing lessons on the way anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do we, because I think that that action piece is the hardest piece for a lot of people because it's so easy to, think and journal and meditate and do all of the things behind the scene. When I do think, like you said, that collapsing that timeline, it is from taking the action. It's from doing the thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's the thing that really will shift your reality. So for people who maybe just who are, whether it's fear or trauma or just something, the mind, like exactly like you said, like the mind wants to be certain, like, well, if I do this, this is going to happen. And it just, that never really works that way. But what like advice or what would you say to people who that is, the hardest piece of it?
Starting to like get really clear on your vision and then start to visualize it, because when we start to visualize it, we close our eyes and we not only visualize it with our mind, but we allow ourselves to get so fucking clear on that vision that we could step into that reality and we could be there and we could feel it in our hearts, because the heart is what connects us to the quantum field. The heart has over 40,000 neurons that's separate from the brain. It has an electromagnetic field that's 5,000 times stronger than the mind. So if we want to be magnetic, we really need to turn on the heart. And if we allow ourselves to then go into this experience and really feel it and imagine it so vividly as if we're there, we're starting to rewire our brain to actually get comfortable at this new level as if we're already there. So we're starting to change our subconscious also while we're doing this. And we have a system in the brain that's called the reticular activating system. And that's the system that's kind of like the portal between the subconscious and the conscious mind. Because if we were to taking everything that's happening in our reality at all times, we would be so overwhelmed. We are seeing less than 0.001% of reality because we're filtering our reality at all times. So that's the reason why we're like going to like, oh, I want to buy a new car. And suddenly you see that car everywhere. It's not because like suddenly everyone got that car. It's just because suddenly you're filtrating for it and you're seeing it all around. And the same thing works with our mind. So when we start like actually getting into that vision of what we want and we start feeling comfortable, more and more comfortable at that new level, even though it feels very far away now, because when something is vividly imagined, your mind cannot tell if you're there or if it's something you're imagining. So you're starting to calibrate your body and your mind and your nervous system to you already being there. So when we start doing that, we also start filtering our reality for the things that we'll need in order to get to that vision, because we're like, ah, that person suddenly. And we're also changing the frequency of our body to be more in resonance with these people because we have changed our beliefs and we're also changing the nervous system as we're doing this. So that's why I'm such a like I love meditation and visualization and hypnosis experiences, because it's also very accessible for people. Like I love that people usually like hate sitting down and like actually taking some time usually to sit with themselves. And that's the hardest battle, but it's very accessible. Like you don't need any money. You just need to prioritize it. It's just the investment of time. So when we start doing that, we can see amazing experiences in our reality and collapse time really fast. And it's interesting that you say like most people like have a hard time taking action, because what I see is like it's very much either or. Some people are so stuck in the action that they have no time to strategize or be creative, and they're just going until they suddenly realize, fuck, like this train is going in the wrong direction, because they haven't even had enough time to like orient themselves. They're just so addicted to doing, right? Instead of like, oh, taking a step back and being like, okay, what's actually going on here? Where do I actually want to be? And that's just different ways of the nervous system of expressing like being in a distressed state, where we're even either in like a fight response or flight response, or we're in a more like freeze or fawn state where we're not able to take action. So usually when we will have different people will have a little bit of like different default patterns very often, but we all kind of fall into different patterns at different times depending on what's going on.
Yeah. And so for both these type of people, you recommend the visualization meditation to
Yeah,
sort of get
I,
clear.
I do. And for, I think for the people that are, have a tendency to like really like do way too much, like it's sometimes a little bit harder because, or probably for both, but when you're very used to being in this like state of overdrive, and a lot of people that are type A and they're leaders and they're very accomplished, they're also priding themselves on this. Like, it's like,
Mm.
I'm working harder than anyone else, you know? And it's like, I'm doing all of these things. And then realizing like, yes, you've, and they probably also had amazing accomplishments doing that, right? It's like, it's what I built my success on. And then, like, yes, but if you want to get to the next level of this game, then we need a different strategy because you are hitting a ceiling and you're not getting there. So, taking a step back, and then for those people, when they are relaxing, their nervous system is likely going to go into a very dysregulated state because they're going to feel very they're not going to feel safe because you're not in motion because that's their default pattern. So suddenly they're like, what's going on? Like, I can't take action. It's going to be hard sometimes to be present when they're trying to relax or trying to do like be with their friends and they're just thinking of work, you know, they can't really get out of it. So it's just kind of, yeah, starting to acknowledge that and also realizing like, okay, this is a pattern. And then using tools like, for example, tapping is something I love to use in the moment because it's very rapid. It's like you can feel emotion come up and you're like, okay, I feel so dysregulated right now. And you can start to tap. And we have all of these different ways so we can regulate the nervous system in the moment. We can dance, right? It's an amazing way, especially if we're having a lot of this like overdrive energy, just move the body and get it out, going for a walk or going for a run. Because if we're in forward motion, then the body actually believes that we're like going forward on our mission, even though we might not be doing that. We're just moving forward in this physical reality. Or even a fun one is chewing gum. Like that's actually something that will also help regulate you and like bring you into a more calm state because often food will also help like calm our nervous system. So if we're undernourished, for example, it's going to be really hard to get you into a parasympathetic state no matter what because your body is going to feel like you're not secure or safe because you don't have enough nutrients. So yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, tapping is when I always will do it like right here. I mean, I do tapping in
Yeah.
sequences, but when I'm feeling anxious, like for whatever reason, I did EMDR therapy for quite a few years. So I don't know if it's just
Yeah.
that like kind of movement that does it for me, but yeah, it's so interesting because it's like it is these like really simple practices I think that we are so resistant to, and maybe it's the resistance of the change like you said, it's the resistance of like that subconscious belief of like I'm not worthy or I can't handle it or it's too much responsibility, right? So we're just like it's so sneaky, the
It's
subconscious,
so
like we
sneaky.
self-sabotage in so many ways,
And
like
we all do this. Like I
yeah,
teach this. I still do this. Like it's
yeah,
not like I'm doing this perfectly either, right?
yeah,
It's like, and this is sneaky patterns and suddenly like, shit, I thought that that was the greatest part about me. And now I'm realizing
mm,
like, ooh, that's a pattern I haven't seen, you know, and it
yeah,
might be like functional in some ways, but it also has some dysfunction to it. And as we level up and get more responsibility and more impact and more, there's also coming more challenges. Maybe there's more people to manage, right? There's like all these new things. Then there's going to be new layers of that you'll see come to life. So it's
yeah.
always evolving. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a lot in like those habits, right? And which is I think why sometimes it's so hard to like implement, whether it's meditation or tapping because we're so used to a certain structure within our day.
Yeah.
But I like even yesterday I sat down in the morning and I pulled the tarot card of just like what I needed and it was like inner child work and things like that. And so I was sitting there with it and I was like, okay, well, today when my kids want my attention instead of doing work, right, which I'll, edit or whatever it is, like work, my intention was to be just present with them in those moments, right? And I
Mm.
even found myself, my son wanted to go outside and play, which requires me to go outside with him, and I was going to be like, no, I'm working. But I was like, no, you literally sat this morning and said when this came up. And it's like the universe is giving you these opportunities, right? And it's so easy to be like, well, no, I'm working right now. We'll do it later.
A
So it's
hundred
like
percent.
in those little moments, which maybe it doesn't feel like a life changing moment, but it's like the fact that you're doing that action, right? That you had already set forth for yourself in the morning, just like kind of building that trust within yourself.
100%. And I think it's interesting also how so many of us will like always prioritize work over our friends in a way. It's
Mm,
like, oh, I can't, I have a meeting. I can't, I have this work call. It's like, it's never like for work, like, I can't, like, I really need to call my friend right now. Like, I really need to be there for them right now. Like, obviously, if it's something like really big, but just like also remembering like how important relationships are in our life. And I think oftentimes we don't remember that until we're very undernourished by it or someone is like really having a hard time or we're really having a hard time and we're like, shit, I haven't really been like nourishing my friendships. Like, who's going to be here for me right now, you know?
Yeah.
And then just like allowing ourselves to also take time to that, to take time to be in the enjoyment of life. Because when we do that, when we're happier, when we're more radiant, when we're more magnetic, that's also when we start attracting all these fun things into our life. Like a lot of the one-to-one clients that I have, like it comes in through like ridiculous ways. I have this like um on my sheet where they're kind of filling things out. It's like, why do you want to work with me? And it's like, I saw you in a meditation years ago. Like it's
Mm.
stuff like that. And it's like rapidly, like where after a sound healing, like I had this just like deep knowing that we've been in the same state and I just need to work with you.
Mm.
So, and that's not something I can strategize myself to. It's like, so I think when we are really deeply devoted to our mission and we're like emanating that, we're in our truth, we're in alignment, then the right people will also start to drop in and the right experiences. The biggest kind of things I've done in business, the biggest collaborations I've done this year, all have happened through like the biggest synchronicities. And that's what becomes so fun when we start playing this game. It's like,
Mm.
what is that even like? What? You know, and we can just be like, and then we get to do it over and over again.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. Cause I think like so many times it's so easy to get taken away with like what you should be doing or what this person is doing, what that person is doing. Right. And it's just like coming back
100%.
and throwing it away and just kind of trusting yourself and following those things that drop in. Right. It's like, yeah, there's so many times like I'll ask for something and then it comes, but I feel uncomfortable. So I'm like, ooh, but not that. You know, it's like
Yeah,
it's literally being given to us. It's like, what are you
yeah,
doing?
yeah. A
But
hundred
I think
percent. And
everybody
very
does that.
often, yeah, and very often that can be like our subconscious, right? It can
Mm,
be like a deeper part of us that's like, oh, I really want that, but I don't really feel worthy of that. So then we're
yeah.
like not answering the email or not taking action or like maybe I'm not ready to speak on that big of a stage. And you're
Mm,
like, like procrastinating and suddenly the opportunity is gone or whatever it is, instead of being like, fuck no, this is what I said that I'm going to do. And I feel the fear. It's okay. You're there. I'm honoring you. Maybe I'm tapping a little bit on it. Maybe I'm doing some hypnosis work on it. Maybe I'm doing some somatic work on it. But I'm not going to let this fear stop me from claiming who I know I can be.
mm,
Because if we wait again until the fear is gone, then we're going to be waiting forever. Because the
yeah.
fear also gets obliterated by we being like, fuck no. Like my potential is greater than the fear. And then
Yeah.
doing it anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, what does this look like, these practices, whether in your personal life or just like in general? What does it look like in like your average day? Like, how should we be incorporating it?
I love to meditate every morning or else in the evening. Right now, I'm trying to get into like a deeper practice because there's been a lot of leveling up in my business and a lot of different things. And I've really felt myself being like going into one of the patterns that I tend to go into is like overworking and like in like a hustle mode and
Mm,
being like, oh, all of these things. Right. And I know that that's not what magic happens in my life. So I've been like, okay, no, there's so much going on. We're scaling it back. We're like really prioritizing our practices or meditations. So if we meditate first thing in the morning or just before we go to bed, that's when the brain is naturally in an alpha brainwave state. So that's when we have very easy access to the subconscious mind and into these programming. So if we haven't meditated so much before, like meditation is very similar to like physical training, right? The more we do it, the better we get at it. So a lot of people are like, I can't meditate. It's like, if you can worry, you can meditate because you're just
mm,
keeping your focus on one thing at a time. And that's the same thing you're doing when you're worrying. It's just giving a very different emotional response, right? So allowing ourselves to do that. So I love to do that first thing in the morning or in the evening, and then usually building like a visualization practice where it's like really getting into the visualization, like I talked about earlier, like where I want to be and like the future vision and like what I want to do and feeling it and dropping into right now. I'm actually meditating for about an hour a day, like in the morning. And I know that's not accessible for everyone, but this is like the work that I do. So I also really love to deepen my practices. And then having these like tapping sequences, like you mentioned, you have this like just point here that you love to do when you feel stressed. I
mm,
love the karate point that's right here for the people that are watching on YouTube. It's like if you, yeah, if you're listening, like you understand, like if you're doing karate or like like through a block or something, it would be like the back of your hand, like on the side there, and just tap with 4 fingers right here. And that's also very good for stress and for just resetting the system. So if we doing that combined with something called box breath, which is like breathing in for 4 seconds, holding 4 seconds, breathing out for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, that's very potent for like just down regulating our system if we're feeling like we're getting activated and want to go into a fight or flight mode, or we're feeling very stressed in our day to day. So that is box breath is actually something that was developed in by Navy SEALs, and they used to use in combat when they were like, that can be pretty stressful, and like to really like calm themselves and be present. So that's something that I find is like very quick and easy. And then obviously if you have time to do breath work and stuff like that, that's amazing. But it can be, maybe that's something you do once a week, or like it's something that you set some time aside on the weekend for. Um, and then obviously getting the nutrition and like we talked about earlier, making sure we try to eat mostly whole foods with and getting enough fat and protein. And then what we didn't talk so much about is also bringing in deliberate stressors, because our nervous system, the way that we build it and make it stronger and more resilient is by stressing it. So a lot of people right now are so obsessed with balance, and you're not meant to be balanced all the time. Like if you are trying to be balanced all the time, you're going to be really weak. Like you're not going to be able to tackle a lot of things coming your way, and you're probably just going to get more anxious and more stressed over time if you're never challenging yourself, because the way we build resilience is by getting challenged. So obviously we want to do that with like things that are responsible and actually building us stronger, like working out. I really love interval training for this. Very good stressor for the nervous system. Same for heavy strength training and lifting, and also hot and cold therapy, like doing, I have a cold plunge here, or if you have like a cold river nearby, but even taking a cold shower for like something happens in like 2 minutes and 40 seconds. So ideally it would be like 3 minutes, and making sure that we don't just put our feet in, because most of the receptors are up here, like on our shoulders and our chest and like on the upper back. And like actually feeling the stress, because when we do, normally that will bring us into more of a parasympathetic after, like especially like both with workouts and with cold therapy, and it builds neurons in the brain, makes us more creative, and helps us also rewire. So it's incredible practices to include on the day to day.
Yeah, I love that. I'm like chronically cold, so I've tried to do like cold plunges or cold showers, and I resist it so hard, which maybe that means it's the thing I should be doing, but like I have such a hard time with that. But
Yeah. It's actually interesting that you're saying that, because when we're doing cold therapy, it kicks up the um your own metabolism. So very often you will feel a lot warmer like a few hours later. And it's also something that you might need to train the body up a little
yeah.
bit if you have been sick for a while, or you have a very weak nervous system that's not able to handle a lot of stress. Then you don't want to start with like 3 minutes and like ice cold shower. And for women, it's also a little bit different, like especially right before a period, right before ovulation. Like it's better to not do it so cold if you want to do it, because we need also, this is also like cold will also reduce insulin, and we actually need a little bit higher insulin levels in order to go through these biological processes. So it's a little bit more nuanced how we do
Yeah.
it. But then also, yeah, I would encourage you to actually start doing it. And for people that are like, this is a lot, you can start with face dunking, like face dunking just your head. And that's a good way, because you have a lot of receptors right here. So you'll still get a lot of the benefits without it being like so stressful. And you can combine it with breath holds as well, which is going to be good for the brain.
And that's just like in ice water?
Yeah, you can
Or-
just do like some ice cubes and some cold water, and then just dunking and just holding your breath like as long as you can, and then going up a little bit and then going back in. And that's also gonna, yeah, help.
Interesting. I'll have to
Yeah.
try that one. Maybe I'll start there. So one thing that has kind of come up in my mind, kind of as we've been talking, you mentioned the gene keys earlier. And what
Yeah.
I find so fascinating just in this intersection of science and spirituality, or like, mysticism, the gene keys I love, because they talk about how the gene keys and the I Ching are actually like our codons, like our genetic like codons. And it's like, how would you know about that? All, even when you're thinking about like the I Ching, which was something that was created so long ago,
Mhm.
right? And it just like matches up so perfectly with the 64 codons. I don't know, it's just so fascinating. It just like keeps coming up as we've been talking a little bit, but like just kind of looping it back, I guess, at the beginning, just a little fact.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
No, but it's like when I started studying, I was like looking more deeply into my gene keys like 1.5 year ago. Like over that summer, I was like, whoa, it feels like someone is like telling me poetry about my soul, because Richard Rudd also has such a poetic way of like writing. I'm just like, oh
Yeah.
my God, when I'm reading it, it's like someone is just like blessing your soul with like all this truth. And I'm just sitting there like, wow, this is insane. Someone sees me deeper than I sometimes even see myself. But it's just like the deepest level of truth that I feel in my heart, like what I'm here to do. And it's also, we have all these transitions that we're going through as a collective as well, right? So it's interesting to just see how how we can relate to a lot of the different ones, but how,
Yeah.
yeah, it comes together in a beautiful way. And I don't think one thing has to be exclusive from the other. We don't have to, like you were mentioning about veganism as well. It's like easy to put yourself in a box and like we put an identity around that. And I think in the beginning, when started to become more spiritual as well, after being very into the science for such a long time, it was like judging myself a little bit around it. Like, this is weird. Like, and yeah, sometimes spirituality can be really weird, but like, does it really matter? Like
Yeah.
um, I think there's a deeper truth than the truth of the mind, and it's only access to the heart. And it's then this um, unconditional truth that's just a deep knowing that when something is really true to us, we will know. And there's going to be no need to prove that necessarily to anyone else because you're just like, this is my truth. And that's really all that matters. We're not here to prove our life to anyone else.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, one question I always ask on the Emotional Mastery podcast, which is it's transition now, but I still love the question because I think our emotions are such a huge part of our everyday life. But what has your relationship been with your emotions like over time, or like maybe, in your early 20s or before you did this work? And like, how has it transformed now?
Mm. I, for a long time, I felt like I couldn't even feel my emotions. It was actually very interesting. It was like almost like I never really felt super happy. I never felt really sad. I was just like, because I'm just balanced and
Mm-hmm.
content, until I just suddenly like accessed this deeper layer. And then when I did, like life just becomes so much richer because if we are just not allowing ourselves to feel life because it's scary. Like, life is, we have all of these so strong emotions sometimes that can feel so overwhelming and can just feel like it's just easier to turn that off, and just like live in this like day-to-day life where everything is predictable, but we're also losing out on so much of the magic of life. And we're also losing out on a lot of our intuition because that is also felt in a different way than we can't necessarily analyze with our mind. We need to feel with the heart. And if we are not accessing our emotions, then we're also not really accessing our heart. So when I started opening up for that, I think my life just became infinitely richer. My personality became richer. I felt things at a deeper level, both joy and pain, but I wasn't so afraid of the pain anymore, the sadness anymore. I understood that that is also a beautiful teacher in life, and it's something that needs to be felt. If not, it will just get buried underneath somewhere else and it will have so much more impact on my life instead of me just actually feeling and acknowledging it. And sometimes I still don't acknowledge it in the moment. I'm like, oh, fuck no, I don't want to feel that right now. Right. And then it's like, okay. And sometimes it's not, you can't always feel it at the moment. Like, it's not always like you're on the plane and it might not be the best time to just go into big, like, emotional outbursts. So obviously we can be conscious of that as well, but just trying to remind ourselves of the fact that it's coming up because it's ready to be felt. And if we don't, then it's just going to be stored and it's going to come up at a later point. And before it does, it's going to probably make a lot of havoc in your life. So it's better to just acknowledge it and feel it and just let it be with it because it's a beautiful teacher.
Yeah, I love that. And I think
Yeah.
that's a huge lesson for Pisces too, right? In that
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
the most watery of the water signs. It's like everything that's about it. So to like come to that, and to be able to understand, like the more we resist it, that's when we're suffering,
Yeah,
it's not
hundred
beautiful in all
percent.
ways.
Yeah, because Pisces is also like, yeah, we're very flowy and like inner
Yeah.
emotions. And I think like when we're kind of not accepting that, we're also losing out on a lot of our magic, a lot of our creativity, right? That's also, we need to feel in order to feel the broad spectrum of what's
Yeah.
available to us there. So it's also opened up my creativity in a completely different way.
Mm.
It has. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with everyone. This has been so fascinating. Like I said, I love this like intersection of just like I love manifestation. I think it's so fascinating, and all of the mind, the way it works is just I don't know. It lights me up. I love it.
Yeah.
So where can people find you, and how can they work with you?
They can find me on Instagram, Cecilia Stabell. And then I also have a podcast called Divinely Driven, where I talk a lot about these concepts and really like how to collapse the timeline to your future self. How do we do that through quantum leaping and through nervous system work, through a lot of subconscious work. And then I have a website, Cecilia Stabell, where all my offers are going to be. I do take on one-to-one clients, but it's in a mentorship capacity. So it's like, I really do believe that change happens. We can have amazing change in a moment, but that it happens over time. And I really like to work with people, not just in like one-on-one session, but over a little bit more of a time. And then I have a program called the MetaMind Manifestation Master Course, which would probably be where we're going a lot deeper into a lot of the things we talked about today, and really also getting a full library of like exercises, tapping, hypnosis, meditation, somatic practices to just not know this information in our mind, but just really drop into it with our bodies. And also, I'm like, people could probably tell today, very into like also the understanding of these things. Because if we don't understand, we can be motivated for a little while, but we're likely not going to keep doing it over time. And if we're not, then we're not seeing any change. So I also think the understanding part is important. So I teach quite a lot of there as well.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think giving the mind something to like focus on and that, like you said, the understanding of it is really helpful. I love
100%.
it.
And in order to be consistent with anything, I think there needs to be some layer of understanding there, or at least some knowing that something will come out on the other end. Because if not, then we'll just move on to the next thing. There's so many things to, you know, try and do right now that we can get introduced to. So it needs to be a reason to stick with something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so nice to meet you and to have you on.
Likewise. Thank you.